White Noise, we're back. Year 2, coming up on the anniversary of the first ever episode of White Noise in a few weeks.
Word?
Well, don't forget, we pre-recorded it, but the Patreon dropped Mania weekend in Dallas.
RIP to my job. That means it's the 1 year anniversary of me getting an email telling me. I mean, it's the facts. I mean,
no, you're right. You're right. Yeah,
it might have been a couple weeks, but that's what killed me. Matter of fact, that means we're coming to the anniversary of the premiere of the season 3 Atlanta episode, Full Circle 360.
Yeah, because you wrote that for GQ magazine.
It was. I had to write it for GQ because the piece that piece should have went up on Complex. They let me go that Monday or Tuesday or whatever.
And you took it with you.
Dumbass. It was that Tuesday because I had a conversation. I watched it Monday. Anyway, I'm sorry. Year 2. Salutes.
I don't know. Again, I guess we'll do a live show for the anniversary of the first ever episode. I mean, I don't know if we can get Semper Vivi to talk about Jay White in person, but I don't think he's making the trip to the coast.
It'll be Mania weekend.
Yeah.
We may need to pre-record. So I don't know. I still don't know when we're gonna do BRP for that week.
Yeah.
We'll
be doing it this time next weekend.
No, maybe depend or some other day, depending on who. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that at another time, though. Anyway.
But again, I'm Davis, aka Drip. As always, I'm joined by Khal. On this week's episode, we'll be talking about the 4 Pillars promo that took place at the start of Dynamite. We'll get to that a little bit later. That might be the main event of the episode. But there's some.
Gosh. Anyway.
But there are some other things that dropped in the Off-White section. So if you're not paying the 1 or paying the 10, Off-White is the first 20 to 30 minutes where Khal talks about whatever he wants to talk about before the show starts. And we were talking about Swarm, which is Amazon's new show co-created by Donald Glover, which is his... Do you want to call it a satire on stan culture?
I think
it's about last week with satire and parodies and all that. I mean...
I think it's definitely a commentary at the very least on stan culture, but it's also, I mean, at heart, it's a psychological thriller.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, it gets bloody. Again, if you haven't checked out, maybe I'll drop a link to the Swarm trailer in the description. Make a note to myself, but if you haven't checked it out, link in desk description. If you haven't checked it out, like it gives there's blood on the floor.
Yeah. As I said, we've talked about this the last few weeks because it was one of the big things I was kind of low key anticipating. It was just something that was on my radar. I wasn't super hyped about it, but it's commentary on Beyonce stans and having the name Donald Glover attached to it and the cast itself, at least for the pilot. Dominique Fishback, Damson Idris, and Chloe Bailey. And the trailer, as we watched it in Off-White, looked amazing. But my whole thing, too, was how much can you get out of this? And as we talked about, it's only 7 episodes, and they're, I think, all half hours, and they dropped all at once. So that's the fortunate part, is you can just kind of get through this quick if it's good, bad, great, or horrible. To me, I liked it. The first episode, and we're talking about light spoilers, but
right.
But it was one of those things where I'm like, again, like after watching the first one, I'm like, how much further can you go? And by watching the trailer, it's like it's obviously going to go in some more darker directions. But just watching that first episode, I'm like, it's tough to say. Like, is he picking on these women?
No, I'm glad we're having this conversation. I've not read a lot. But after I watched the show, I had to take a look and see what people were saying about it. I need to really read up on interviews with Dominic Fishback. Shouts out to Carla Rodriguez over at Complex. Your article is saved in my pocket. I just haven't checked it out. I saw some site they mentioned that. Was it South by? It was at some festival, and they were doing like a question and answer or something. And so he heard somebody mention that anytime they make like movies or projects about black women, it's always on like someone who's put together and regular, like, you know, just like they just happen to be black. It's never like, you know, when are there like the projects about black serial killers? So I think it was initially the idea of, you know, it's well, they said that he wanted to do something about black serial killers. I think there was black women who were serial killers, which is like a niche within a niche. Like the last time I saw something was like that was that movie Ma, which is super campy. It was kind of dark, but
that's famously written and directed by Tate Taylor, a white man.
White man. But Janine Neighbors does her thing. You know, as we spoke about a couple episodes back, the move of the black horror movement is alive and well, and it's this show is it's smart. It's smart. I think it's because it's Donald Glover. There's going to be some commentary on society. I think they called it there's a key word that they use in when they talk about the show, or a key phrase. They describe it as, where was it? Post.
Oh, it's one of those words.
Glover just compared the series to post-truth piano teacher mixed with the king of comedy, which is the Scorsese film.
Yeah,
with Rob De Niro,
which inspired the Joker.
Exactly. So you know, it's
Todd Phillips' Joker. Yeah,
they're specifically trying to make an anti-hero story using both Tony Soprano and Don Draper as inspiration. So it's supposed to be dark. It's supposed to be a little, you know, true crimey in a way of taking you inside the mind of a serial killer and how that would work. They didn't mention Dexter, but I imagine, like, you know, fans of stuff like that might get into it. But it's
Dexter, the whole point of him is he's a killer with a code. Like, he's killing for the right reasons, but he's still a killer. This is more like you said, like, she is troubled or something in her has snapped to the point where she's killing for a reason, like for her own reason. And that's,
I'm just saying it in terms
because
of
she's
like
a stan of this Nyjah, you know, this Beyonce proxy.
No, I was going to get there. I was just saying Dexter in terms of like just being able to be in on. I mean, because if you watch
for
the
someone
trailer,
who's committing murder,
there's murder going on, and you're like right there seeing what's going on. There's
I guess that was the whole point of the Dahmer show, right? And I didn't watch that at all. But the whole point of that show was like, why would you want to watch the show because of what? And again, this was a real person compared to this show, which is fictionalized. Even though the opening 15 seconds is like, this is a true story, because
but that's where you get to what it's wrapped around, and it's wrapped within the stan culture of like Beyonce's Hive, and I think it was originally called Hive, and it became Swarm.
Yeah, I think that's why it sounded familiar, because I think, but Swarm is also, again, it's super clever, much like all of his work, and that's why I love it, because he is smart to, like, again, like the Running Scared tour poster, as we talked about in the trailer. And, you know, she has a sister that, according to one woman, is a better artist because she's more different and you can relate to her easier. And that being Solange to, you know, Beyonce. And
I joke, but whatever function that Jay-Z and Donald Glover are going to be at some point, if they interact, it's going to be a very interesting conversation.
I've only seen like a quick headline. I think the Jay-Z character is supposed to be named Cache.
Yes.
Which is kind of funny too.
Did they show? You only saw the first episode.
I just watched the first today. Yeah.
Because you saw some Nyjah stuff in it.
The festival video, yeah, which is like, that's not supposed to be Renaissance. It's too early, but it was. I think
it was given Renaissance. When I saw it, it was making me think more like Lemonade.
Yeah.
When that dropped, but
actually, it should be, because if they were filming this last year, within the last 8 months.
But you got to remember, and
that'd be post Renaissance.
Did they put a time? Because it
says 2016, yeah, which is another weird thing about it. But I mean, it's not supposed to be within. I guess you're right. Yeah.
What did you say? It's very clever.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Jay-Z and Beyonce and you follow the dates, because that's not just something that just happened. That is a continuing thing. They're being very deliberate, and if you go into the lore of the Wikipedia, rabbit hole of Beyonce and Jay-Z's life, it's right. But that's why you're getting this is not a work of fiction, because
it literally says this is intentional, which I'm like, sheesh, like, okay.
I'm giving this away for free, but I thought about it last night, and it's not a 1-to-1, but you know how when Uncut Gems, no, like you've read about the making of Uncut Gems, like the writing of the script and stuff.
So the Safdies grew up the sons of a jewelry store owner, a Howard type character too. And I don't know how much of the degenerate gambler was their father. I think it kind of was autobiographical in that aspect. A guy who had, if I'm mistaken, like I think they're supposed to be the two sons in the house when he comes home that night. And I think they do have a sister as well.
I'm
pretty sure. I don't think I'm mistaken. I'm pretty sure a lot of that, like, and that's why I think he says Joshy, like when one of them's like trying to go to bed when he's watching the game.
I never thought you just put, but I was actually going somewhere else with it. But you've read how there were other basketball players.
Oh yeah, there was supposed to be the Kobe Bryant version. Kobe Bryant said I have to write it and direct it myself or something like that. And that's when I was like, this guy. But I can't say what I want to say, but I'm like the audacity.
I mean, yeah. But the key is they were doing it within like a real time frame. Like there were points because that they were hitting.
Is the weekend during the time of Trilogy,
and I think they were trying to tell this story within that, so they had to match these beats within that.
Yep.
What they're doing with Swarm is it's such a brilliant. It's kind of like because they don't want to say this is the Beyonce and Jay-Z. We're making a fanciful thing about this Beyonce and Jay-Z thing, about these fairly known stories that they're not forthcoming with at all in terms of information, but you definitely know about them. You especially if you're a fan, you know the ins and outs of everything that went on in those situations, whether it was a line in a song or something that you saw on TV, whatever the case may be. But they use those as place marks to kind of weave this black woman who is a serial killer. Yeah. And like, because I when you mention how much is there, it's funny. It's not too far off from the conversation we had about the cowboy. What was the shit?
Copenhagen Cowboy.
It's kind of like that. It's like you got to look at this that's why I say
I actually thought it was the same as Copenhagen Cowboy in terms of like visually, except it had a much better story.
Yes,
to tell than Copenhagen, because the whole point of Nicholas Winding Refn is it's mostly just vibes. Story is secondary, which is why I famously said one time when we did that episode is that when he had like his own version of a documentary being filmed during when he made Only God Forgives, he said like, I don't know if this story but with Ryan Gosling and the woman is working, and it's like you're saying that as you're making the movie.
Exactly.
Famously, Nicholas Winding Refn shoots his movies in the order of the story, not like we film the end one day and then the start one day. Like he films it in sequential order, as they call it. So like for him to say that as he's making the movie, being like, I just filmed this, I don't know if it's working. But for Donald Glover to tell the story, which, and the reason I said is he like picking on these women, because like the unfortunate part is like Dominique Fishback's character Dre is the sister of Chloe Bailey's Marissa's character, and is like, Marissa seems like the popular one. She has a boyfriend in Damtis Idris, and they say like Dre's a virgin and she doesn't do much, or like she's the weird sister in the corner. I'm like, and I think famously at times in Atlanta he had some criticism of his portrayal of women. There was like that episode about the Drake house and how like the one bigger woman wasn't allowed in. Mm-hmm. And there was, even though I think he always portrayed Van in a positive light, but there would be like her friend was like the trophy girlfriend kind of, and then the other, the friend in the French episode was like I think he was commenting on women who just want to be flown out. So that means like they'd pee on a dude just to get flown out. And I don't know I don't think he has a problem with women, but it just shows like
I think it looks away when he is like I think when Van's the only main character and you don't really get a lot of Van, people start looking at what other women and how much faculty they
and how
have
they're
in the
portrayed.
projects,
Yeah.
and a lot of but I don't like. I would say if there's an episode about a party that people are throwing at Drake's house and with everything that's involved in that, yeah, I would not be surprised if they didn't let a certain type of looking person
Woman,
in there. That's so I feel that's more a commentary on that culture as a.
And there's also the other aspect where I think that might be Danielle Deadweiler now, right? The woman who's upset that the actress she has a crush on is dating a white woman. And she stares at the white woman the whole time at the party. And she's like, that's not what you think. I've been with him for years and years. And like, she then feels like guilty that like, she's just like, why you got to take our men? Like, get your own, like, but the whole point is like, this it was like, I've stood by him since he was like a waiter in acting school or something like that. So like, she was like, oh, my bad. And it's that stigma of like, black women get upset if black men date white women or outside their race. And I mean, the whole point of Van is like, Van gets a lot of the big moments over the course of the series too.
Right.
Especially in the Helen episode, which is
she gets her shit in
no,
there.
but it's the story of a woman who
can't get her shit in there.
No, but the story of Helen is Ern's not good enough for Van. That's the whole point of Helen, and he's not willing to fight for her because that's why they play ping pong at the end. She's like, if you want to be with me, then you got to beat me. Like
exactly.
And it's by him losing.
Show me you want to fight me. You really want to fight for this.
But I'm not calling him out for being sexist or anything like that, because someone like Sam Levinson has shown his hand way worse of what he thinks of women, especially young women.
Well, yeah, because he wants them all to be nude is a thing.
Yeah. And whereas like this, like I said, like the mindset, like there aren't that many black serial killers or black women serial killers. So that's an interesting aspect to focus on. And again, very inventive, as well as what he was doing with, tying things to like reality in terms of who's supposed to be Beyonce, who's supposed to be Jay-Z, and the iconography of what she was wearing and on the horse and all that. Yeah, it was.
I think because the one I don't want to touch too much on the conversation of, is this an anti-woman thing without a black woman who's watched it on? And I would like to know your thoughts when you get more into the show. So I do think, maybe revisiting Swarm in the near future could be cool too, because it just came out, and I don't know if people are trying to watch it yet or not, but I think Donald Glover, when did you ever read? Did you know that he was doing like an animated Deadpool?
Yeah. So I was really following him a lot during that period.
During that moment,
Atlanta season 2 has come out. He had Solo. This is America. He did he was doing this Deadpool cartoon that famously like was killed as soon as like it was supposed to come out or whatever. Or like in terms of like they announced the deal, he wrote a script. They said it's not happening anymore.
Yeah,
and it's funny. I've been listening to old episodes of the Watch podcast from around this time frame where they talk about Donald Glover and him being. He would have been the MVP of 2018, even though Solo kind of tanked at the box office.
He was up there, yeah.
He was one of the key parts of that movie being good and like the takeaways of it being good. But yeah, in Atlanta season 2, Robin season, his direction and writing and performances, Teddy Perkins surprisingly, along with just playing Ern himself, being dumb enough to race Mike Vick at night because he factored in Mike Vick racing 4 times, and it's like his math to think he could beat Mike Vick is one of the funniest things ever written. He's like, he's had 4 races at 11 o'clock at night. Outside, he's like, I think I can take him. And then
outside the club, yeah.
They do the starting positions. Mike Vick looks back at him, and then they cut to them in the limo, and she's like, "It's Mike fucking Vick." It's like,
yeah, what do you expect, you idiot?
And it's like episode over. I think it's like, and he was supposed to. I think maybe later that year they announced the Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which was supposed to be a collaboration between him and Phoebe Waller-Bridge as writers of the show and stars of it. She dropped out a year or 2 later, and he's remained on. I can't remember who they attached to be the Mrs. Smith aspect.
I forget.
But since they filmed Atlanta season 3 and 4 back to back, and especially overseas, and then quietly, he hasn't been doing much. And then the show comes out. He also did have Guava Island in between, but I still never checked out Guava Island, which was the movie Hiro Murai and Rihanna made.
It was cool. I mean, it was like very musical.
Mm-hmm.
But
then he said since that he stopped making music, but apparently there's a soundtrack to this show that he's a part of.
It's a 4-track EP, I believe, but it's mostly like the music in the show because Nyjah is a character. So
I think it's actually a pretty good impression of like what a Beyonce song is supposed to sound like. I think they do that really well. Just like, what was the guy's name? He's kind of supposed to be Chance the Rapper, right? On season 2.
On shouts out to my mans too.
Yeah, I forget the characters. I forget the characters, but he was basically supposed to be like Chance a little bit, right? Like,
was it Chase? Was it
County?
It's Clark County.
Yeah, Clark County. Yeah, I was saying like it's a play on something. But he had like the Yoo-Hoo commercial.
Mm-hmm.
You got figure that Yoo-Hoo. Like,
yeah,
and then when the Keith Stanfield's like, yeah, like. But see, like that's brilliant. Or like, even though like you never really see Paperboy perform anything except the first song, and that's through a phone in the show, as you hear all about that Paperboy. Like
they play that little snippet twice, but it was like during the end credits on one episode, and
but in season 3 when he's performing on stage and they show Earn on stage like rapping as he's watching the show, like that's the only other time you get like music.
But that's the problem. People get hung up on getting the whole song and
like, and can Brian Tyree even rap, or can he betray a rapper? Because he can betray what it's like to be a rapper brilliantly. Damn, he showed that when he smacks the man to get his money and everything else. But
that Deadpool Donald Glover situation was almost 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I only bring it up because I remember I was looking for a piece that I wrote on it.
There was like a Rich the Kid joke or something. It was like,
one of the notes that I had, or one of the lines I had in the piece that I wrote about it, said, I realized that my level of productive petty is nowhere near Donald Glover's. The thing that killed me, they canceled the show, and within that week, a script.
They leaked the script. They did the Ryan Reynolds. They canceled the movie and
the script that they leaked, there was some stuff. There was 15
it was very
pages.
Weird. Yeah.
Matter of fact, oh my gosh, this is so brilliant. It referenced the cancellation of the show. It referenced there was a black guy who had gotten murdered by the police in Sacramento, Stephon Clark, as well as the time when Sanaa Lathan allegedly bit Beyonce.
Oh yeah! Oh my
God! Among other things,
you think they're going to do that on the show?
I drip.
You think he's been holding on to that Sanaa Lathan bit Beyonce bit?
I'm saying I think that Donald Glover is very much in tune with what's going on in pop culture.
Well, he was a writer on 30 Rock. It was on Community. I don't know how much input he had on that creatively. I think he was just in that more of a, I don't want to say a pawn to be disrespectful, but he was in there to play a part.
Right.
I don't know if he helped Dan Harmon or, whoever took the show running duties after Dan Harmon was shit canned to be a creative partner in the show. But,
right.
Which is why I think he's always kind of hesitant to come back when it's been discussed as another reunion season or a movie that they're doing now.
He don't want that.
He did the Zoom. But that's because it was COVID and all that. It was easier to participate in something like that when you have the time and I think schedules and.
But that may be all you're getting. Like there were questions about Atlanta coming back. Somebody asked me about, is there going to be a Swarm season 2? I don't even worry about it.
And if anything, this is probably a idea he had for Atlanta, but he's like, I could probably tell this over 3 hours instead of like shoving it into one season of Atlanta, like one episode of Atlanta.
Drip, I'm gonna say this, and I don't want to say I'm glad that Atlanta is gone, but I'm so happy that Donald Glover has the opportunity to be at somewhere like Prime, where I don't want to say they're giving him carte blanche, but he's able
they
to
give everyone carte blanche, as we'll talk about with Citadel season 2 being renewed before season 1 airs.
I'll just say that the beauty of Donald Glover not having to be constrained to telling a 10 episode one season long, thing, and saying, hey, here's the story, here's all this other stuff I can throw in here and these elements that I want to do, but I want to tell this type of story and be able to make it. And again, fucking Dominic Fishback, watch it. If you're a horror fan, I don't care if you know.
She's doing all the acting, and I don't mean that in a negative way of like it's over top. Like she is, as the show is going forward, I can imagine like she is just the star of the show, as these other characters will come in and out. Like the other Culkin brothers in the show for a very weird scene.
I was watching the trailer and I was like, oh shit, he was in that for like, oh my gosh.
Which was very unexpected, like to see the one who isn't on Succession and the one who wasn't in Home Alone.
There's a random callback to that scene too. It's a really random callback to that scene. I let me know. I hope you recognize it. It's very brief.
But is it as brief as what you see in that scene? I bet it, yeah. Because that was just a real like, well, they did that, like. But I mean, like Damson Idris is again doing all the acting in this episode too. He's still holding on to that, like,
too.
He's doing that Franklin accent in Houston.
Yeah, I guess it was just it was easy enough.
I think he can only do this American accent. Is it like he can only do like how English guys like?
Nah, he could do Chris Tucker. I just saw it on Jimmy. He was on Jimmy Fallon, and really? He said when he was a kid, his family, I guess they used to watch a lot of Def Comedy Jam, and Jimmy Fallon was trying to get him to,
reenact something.
He would pick up accents and stuff like that, and he did a whole, and it wasn't bullshit because I know that Chris Tucker bit, and he did the bit like verbatim, so it was interesting to see. But yeah, that was definitely Franklin like remix.
Yeah, it was Houston. Franklin and Houston, because he's and he calls her Cherry Pie, like he's
Cherry Pie
again. Like they were setting that whole thing up too, and I'm glad it like, even though I was weirded out like that her and Chloe Bailey are sisters, because the whole time you think maybe she's in love with Chloe Bailey, but then it's like, oh, they're sisters, so it's a sisterly love. Because again, like there's the famous scene that made its way on the timeline yesterday of Damson Idris and Chloe Bailey, which you haven't even watched this show, but you've seen that scene. But yeah, I mean it's an interesting show. I mean, again, like I instantly thought of Copenhagen.
Man. Whole timeline talking about that.
Yeah, what did I say in the chat the other day?
In
our nasty work chat. I mean,
shouts to them though. Do your thing. Get that Prime money and make the show you want to make for real.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll keep checking it out. I wasn't like, oh, this is awful, this is bad. I'm just like intrigued. Like, how are you going to keep this going? Because again, I had seen the trailer prior, and I'm just like, I know it's going in all these different turns. Like, what's going to be like the deciding like factor of like she's going to go down this path, and it's not just like what's happened in her life and what she's kind of meeting, which is like meeting Nyjah and like speaking it into existence as they were kind of saying. But
right, what's
I don't want
funny?
to spoil too much because there are like two big shocks. I wasn't as surprised by one because I'm like, I bet this one person didn't have time to be on set that long, so I'm not surprised.
I mean, yeah, they no, yeah, but it's one of those things where when I watched the trailer, I was trying to see how much of the show they put in there. There's they touch on fairly much of the 7-episode story.
Probably 70% of the pilot, and then
it's a lot of the pilot,
and the rest is the stuff I haven't seen yet, but the stuff that you've seen. So yeah, again, that's what TVs for trailers for TV are supposed to be like. Just that first episode, and hints at what's supposed to come. Like, so as I just said a couple minutes ago, like we talked about Citadel last week because that trailer dropped, and then I'm like, it's 6 episodes, Khal. I think this is all these 6 episodes.
Nope.
In this. It's going to be like a lot of plot exposition, and they're probably going to have 2 episodes dedicated to set pieces. But famously, again, this show is the second most expensive show in the history of TV, and not even just TV, the history of Amazon. because they made the most expensive show in the Lord of the Rings show, The Rings of Power.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So Amazon had no choice but to double down on the season 2 just so this doesn't look bad. Like this show might be a flop. I'm expecting it to not be the greatest.
Might be a flop.
Just given how, if you read that Hollywood Reporter article, what went on behind the scenes of creative teams changing and having to reshoot certain stuff and bringing on a new showrunner, new directors halfway through, and the fact that this is mainly designed to set up spin-offs in other countries.
Yes.
And then to connect them. Again, it's the thing like you're building something for a bigger picture instead of the first picture, which is always a negative, which is why we talked about the other day, like with a Spider-Man Sony universe, like they didn't care about making the Amazing Spider-Man 2 good. They cared about making a Vulture, a movie that's going to have the Sinister Six, a movie that's going to have Venom, a movie that's going to have all these other characters and all that. And that's why we have these shitty movies that have come out and are going to keep coming out. No offense to JC Chandor and Aaron Taylor Johnson on Kraven the Hunter, but I'm not expecting that to be good.
No, yeah. And well, the Kraven the Hunter is a good story. The fact that they're making this movie has really got me concerned.
And the Madam Web movie, and again, they're lucky that they have Spider-Verse, but again, that's animated. That's its own cheat code. Is like they can do whatever there.
I wish they'd done the Madam Web show before. That would have made more sense. I really people are hyped for Citadel.
No, it's just me.
There's got to be somebody.
It's just me and Priyanka Chopra, Jonas Stan accounts. That's it. Stan accounts. That's it. It's got
Chopra.
I think it's by the Russo brothers. The Gray Man showed that the Russo brothers maybe were just a tool of Kevin Feige's. They were not the auteurs they thought themselves to be.
Yeah, the Vince Russo brothers.
Basically, yeah. Of
How have I not thought about that before? The Vince Russo brothers? Jesus. That's it can't be the name of this episode, but the Vince Russo brothers.
Again, this is supposed to be Mission Impossible Avengers is what it's supposed to be. That's the appeal of the show, which is why I'm intrigued. Again, I like spy stuff. I like, action stuff. But I know this isn't going to be good. And again, the fact that it had production trouble just shows it's not going to be good. But you have to commit to a second season so you don't get called out for making a bomb and not abandoning it halfway through.
Wait for season 2.
No, it's not even wait for season 2. It's like season 1 was so bad. It's that thing where we can't admit this was a failure. We have to run it back and then cancel it. I don't think this will they're probably we already have the spinoffs in development. We can't just cancel them now. It's that thing of what Bob Iger's trying to prevent at Disney with the MCU in particular. Let's just press pause on what you want to make and let's slowly distribute what we have. Because we were doing too much and look what happened.
I'm not saying it's rare that a show gets canceled for one season, but normally these shows get 2-season runs, right?
But at the cost it was made, and the fact that I told you it was only
expensive.
But I told you it was 6 episodes, and you were shocked, and I was shocked when I read 6 episodes because I'm $250 million for 6 episodes.
For 6 episodes, it's highway robbery. But I think the thing
it's going to look like they spent only $70 million, probably, because it's.
But you think they're not going to spend less for season 2? So my thing, if you're already going to say you're gonna do season 1, why not just announce it to be a 2-season thing and then figure it out from there?
Well, their plan was to do this show and then the spinoffs, and then they would probably, once those spinoffs aired, come back for a Citadel season 2. That would be their Endgame or Infinity War. I think they legit wanted to treat this as we're starting with the Avengers, then going into solo shows, and then coming back.
Okay, DC.
Well, look what happened this week, and they said Shazam is going to tank, and I'm like, you mean another DC movie was released? Because that's all they do, with the exception of Aquaman.
What was the one headline I saw? They were like, they shouldn't have bothered.
They shouldn't have. When the first one came out, I still haven't seen it, but when the first one came out, everyone's like, that wasn't disappointing. It was okay. It was fine. Yeah, it wasn't I like it. It was fine. If that's your thumbs up, then you don't need to try again.
It's one of those things where
And that was DC's problem, which is why they had to bring in James Gunn, because James Gunn's like, we're not going to let shit like this slide. Like,
but that was the thing, though, and I mean, not to get too much on a DC rant, but that was the problem. Was every couple of years, it was usually like 2 to 3 years, they were changing the entire regime. At that moment, Shazam
and the entire slate, a Cyborg movie, a Green Lantern movie.
But that's what I'm saying. Like
Batman movie, when he just talked about how like there's an article that he was I haven't read yet, that he was the star. You know, there was a profile about him. He's like, I was making Justice League, and I'm still supposed to make my own Batman movie, but the process of making Justice League made me feel like, fuck this shit. I'm not going to do this shit. Like, I'm out.
Why even bother, right?
Yeah. No, it was basically that. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And again, they had not just creative changes within who was running DCEU, but who was running the studio. And now with this Warner Discovery thing, it's completely up in the air. But that's why they got James Gunn to come in and be like, you're just be the shepherd of all this. And I mean, he was finally announced to direct the Superman movie he was writing, which wasn't going to be that much of a surprise, because if he's going to write it, why would he let someone else direct it?
No, that's a good point. We got to get back on topic, because somebody on this week's episode of BRP commented, y'all waste too much time off subject, and they put too much time off subject in all caps.
Where was that, in the comments?
It just went up. I'd show it, but it wouldn't look right on my screen. But yeah, it's
no, this is the point of White Noise, is to talk about stuff like this, the stuff I want to talk about. Because I did want to talk about, like, again, Shazam tanked, and I'm like, who would have seen that coming, huh? Like,
who'd have thunk it, right?
Yeah,
who'd have thunk it? But the problem was they probably should have canceled this, right? Like that Shazam 2 realistically was destined to fail once Gunn and Peter Safran came through.
Cancel like that, because
I mean, look, at a certain point, Shazam, that's what I was saying, though. There was a regime change.
Yeah.
Shazam held a certain level in that regime. I think part of it, they wanted to have a more kid-friendly, but like kind of 13-year-old fun, wordy, jokester, badass. And the game changed. This film is a part of that regime. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be part of what happens after Flash. I don't know when. What's his name? Zach Levi?
Oh, Zach Levi. Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing with DC after this. I feel like, at least for right now, it's probably a wrap.
Yeah.
So why bother? Y'all could have kept Batgirl and ditched this.
I think that's why they couldn't ditch this. I think they thought this would be a bigger hit because the first one was a surprise hit, and it has that lighter tone.
During Women's History Month, they couldn't have dropped Batgirl on HBO Max and not drop Shazam.
No, you're right. Because look what they put out a year ago at this time. The Batman.
How about that?
And that's the complete opposite of Shazam. It's dark. It's long. There are some jokes, but it's not really kid friendly, because like I'm saying, like, kids would get freaked out, or you should take a kid to see this. It's like a kid wouldn't really understand this as much unless they were over 10 years old.
All I'm gonna say, Drip, I'm looking at the numbers right now.
Mm-hmm.
Batgirl's budget was $90 million, is what Wikipedia says. Shazam! ! Fury of the Gods, 100 to 125 million budget. I don't even think that's including the marketing budget.
Yeah, how much did it cost to slap those logos on the AEW mats?
How did you? Do I have an? Is there a?
I sent the image I sent earlier, has it on it, but it's cut in half when you just. Oh, see, you can't really see it that well either. But
you see it in the back.
Each pillar is in the corner where they're covering the Shazam. No wonder no one's going to see this movie. They're covering the advertising.
It was on the ring apron too when Sammy went in.
And see, and you know, if anyone who knocked that and thought that was corny, it's like, let's not forget, Austin Theory came out to a Beyblade Titantron a few months ago. So like, and this is Warner Discovery. Like, they have a deal with AEW. They own AEW Dynamite. So this is them marketing their upcoming movie on their show. So
it's why the Rebar Mitzvah was Wednesday and not the week before, huh?
We'll get to that later. Because I told you, like, but no, it's like when they had the House of the Dragon themed Dynamite, and you know, that's
Shark Week and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This ain't new.
No. but yeah, Shazam. I mean, why this is supposed to be like their Ant-Man, like the thing that's lighter and funny that you don't have to take as seriously, and they just it's a superhero movie where you have laughs, and that's why I didn't want to shelve it compared to Batgirl, which would have been, I guess, their version of like Thor: The Dark World or something that that they feared would have tanked or anything like that. Maybe Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to, again, Women's History Month and make two and two together, but the whole thing about like Black Widow is like she's already dead. No one's gonna care about the character. Versus like this is a Batgirl that that's existing in Michael Keaton's universe supposedly, or all that. It was and there, again, how do you think Brendan Fraser felt when he just won this Oscar this past Sunday and like this movie that was supposed to be another factor on his comeback is shelved? But I bet he's also glad that if this movie was supposed to be as bad as they say it was, he might have dodged a bullet.
Yeah, how about that? Never mind. I was gonna say.
Did you watch the Oscars real quick?
Yeah, I watched. I was working that night. I had to edit the piece, so yeah, I had to suffer through a god awful show.
I just watched it surprisingly just so I could listen to the big picture the next day because I was like, even though I didn't care, like I knew Top Gun wasn't going to win my favorite movie of the year. I knew that didn't have a shot. Right. I still haven't seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that cleaned up like I expected it to, just based off how everyone was saying. What I was listening to was saying like it's the clear front runner because it's not going to be Avatar 2. It's not going to be the German war movie because that would just show the Academy's hand again about like they only care about certain things, which is white things. Again, they don't want to respect blockbuster entertainment like Top Gun, which is the movie that saved the industry.
Sometimes water is wet is the problem. Like if this is the Academy is awards, right? That's what it's called. Give your white man awards away. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I mean,
I'm tired. I'm tired of having to worry about what Oscar thinks is the best picture. Like, not it's the institution. Like, you can't escape it if you're in this game, but it's so fucking stupid.
Well, what was your movie of the year? What would you have given Best Picture to if you had your druthers?
Of 2022, what did I watch in 2022? 2022 wasn't a good year for me, movie watching wise. Let's see. I'm literally pulling up my my Letterboxd.
Yeah,
2022.
Because like I said, I would have given it to Top Gun. I thought it was 10 out of 10, perfect all the way, like start to finish, the whole thing.
My favorite movie may have been Nope.
Which I don't think had any nominations.
Nope didn't get any nominations, and I'm not surprised it didn't. But
I mean, the choices for cinematography were pretty weak. I was mad that Top Gun wasn't nominated because again, strapping cameras onto jets,
right?
Like, come on, but there were some amazing shots in Nope.
Nope did a lot.
That's the strongest aspect of how it's shot.
And it was they probably didn't like the Hollywood. Hollywood is gonna eat you at some point. Conversation.
No, they're supposed to love movies about Hollywood.
They're supposed to. Where was Babylon?
That's the other thing. Babylon. They kicked the shit out of Babylon by not giving it anything. I haven't watched Babylon yet, but again, I listened to the big picture, and Sean Finney's like Babylon was the best movie that no one saw. Like,
no, yeah. It literally came and went. But that movie's also like 14 hours.
It's 3 hours, yeah. And I still have Paramount Plus, and it's on there. I'm like, I gotta sit and watch this for 3 hours. I'm like, maybe tomorrow, but
maybe I'll watch it on the plane. Does they get naked in that movie? Maybe I'll watch.
Yeah, I think there is like weird Hollywood sex and nudity in it.
I don't know if I'm going to be watching pro wrestling on the plane. Although I probably should. I probably should load up a bunch of. I just watched Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels for the Black Wrestling Podcast Club. That may be my favorite WrestleMania match ever.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're talking about spectacle,
yeah,
the showcase of the Immortals. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh, but the only other two, Lady Gaga had a weird performance performing the Top Gun song.
Yeah,
like, that song is corny but good, and her performance was awful. But my biggest takeaway was the late great Ray Liotta had the lone spotlight treatment when they were doing the In Memoriam. They they gave him the full screen.
They had
and a Goodfella clip. They have him of Henry getting out of prison. I was like,
he was
did it.
You fucking did it. Was he the biggest name?
I think he was. Yeah.
I think he might have been the biggest name who had passed in 2022. So no, but I mean, he well deserved.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
We paid tribute to the man last year on He Was a Good Fella.
He was a good damn
We talked
fella.
about the greatness that is Goodfellas, a movie that, see, again, Goodfellas didn't win an Oscar for Best Picture or Best Director. So that just shows, like as you, Banks, and I discussed last year, the Academy Awards, the Oscars, they don't mean shit.
Right. Ridiculous.
I think there was one of so The Last of Us season 1 ended.
It ended recently, yeah.
I thought the season was good from start to finish. I'd say a 9 out of 10 overall.
Very strong show. I think it's funny to see people they're divisive about the finale, the way the season ended.
I'm not, but I didn't know that's how the game ended. I was shocked in a good way of him having this darker, more personal agenda, which they were kind of slowly building towards as he kind of had more affection for her, as what you would expect over the course of the journey, and almost for her to feel the opposite a little bit in terms of she was willing to do what it would take. But I thought it was brilliant. Again, both the performances, Bella Ramsey, Pedro Pascal, and the direction of this episode, especially when he has that shootout in the hospital, where it's like secretly quiet.
Yeah,
like it's supposed to be silence, and he's just going, and I'm like, it was the only time where I wondered, like, did he use his Mandalorian training for this episode? Because I'm like, why is my whole time like, why is Joel John Wick?
Right? Why is he that fucking surgeon with that shotgun?
Yeah,
no, but it's the fact that they were able to pull it off and get people. The way that the second
you're supposed
game,
to be angry, like the whole time I'm like, he's doing a bad thing, but he's doing it for himself, and it's that thing like he's like, I need a daughter. And you need a father, like that's his motive, and I'm like, I respect it, but it's like it's kind of wrong at the same time.
What you gonna do?
But again, great writing, it was great show.
Get ready for when they get into because the second game has an interesting twist at a point, and
I think I kind of know what it is based off reading it on accident with certain people.
It turned people off. There was a point in the second game that people. You just said this is the game, we're going to go with it, or they were pissed at how they twisted the narrative with one choice. So if they can recreate that on the show, they're going to be fucking. It's going to be money. I don't know how many seasons this is a show where I don't like at some point
it shouldn't have more.
It's got to end at a certain point.
I thought they said it was supposed to be 2, 1 for each game, but then there was the rumor lately that's supposed to be 3, and that they're splitting the second game into 2 seasons, which I'm also like,
I think the second game it is longer, I think, content wise, so you could justify it, but I don't know.
It's that thing where you don't want to, milk it for more than it's worth, which is smart about. Maybe that's why Bill Hader and Jesse Armstrong are like, our shows should end. There's not much more story to tell. Like Barry can end here in Succession. I think the whole thing with Succession ending at 4 is super smart because it's like, how often you want to keep telling the story of like our dad's evil and like
it has to end. Somebody got to die at some point.
At one point each season they were like one was working against the other, this one was working against another one, and now they're all teaming up to finally work against them, which is like the whole point of the show secretly is that they should have been working together the whole time, and now they finally see it. I'm excited for that to come back. This week's Mandalorian had a great start, but then it became more plot heavy. I don't know if you checked that out. But I still love the show. It's one of those things like I'm not as into Star Wars as I once was. I think Star Wars is awesome when you're a kid, and then when you're an adult, it's like there's some cool moments in it. Like it can do some cool stuff, but it's not like the end all be all where like how I care about the Marvel movies now, because those basically became my Star Wars because they kept coming and coming and coming as I was getting older.
My son is he's a Star Wars fan, but right now the only show that he actually goes to watch is The Mandalorian. I don't think he's watched episode 3 yet, but he's And he don't watch a lot of TV, but when he sits down to watch something, he's going to watch it. And he makes sure every week to tap into the Mandalorian. And so I'm assuming that show is the best of the lot still, unless you're an Andor fan. And
well, that's the thing. I still haven't seen Andor, but this episode was supposed to be similar to Andor in terms of like what's it like in the Star Wars world when you have like one of these Empire or Republic jobs.
Yeah,
and that was the thing where I'm like, again, maybe because sometimes I'm still like basic bro, where I'm like, I don't want to see the boring stuff. Give me the guy in the helmet shooting some stuff. Like,
yeah.
Like, that's why I come. I'm like, that's why I come to watch this show. If I want to watch that show, I won't watch that show.
Put the title on Sami Zayn right now. Let's go. Yeah.
I think the only other thing before we get to the 4 pillar segment was, did you see that Denzel Washington is rumored to be in Gladiator 2?
No. What?
So Gladiator 2 was announced.
I'm sorry. Gladiator 2?
Yeah, it was announced maybe 2 months ago that Paul Mescal, who was the star of one of my favorite shows, Normal People, he was nominated this past Sunday for an Oscar in the film After Sun. Irish actor. He's playing the little kid in Gladiator who was like the son of the queen or the son of the princess. He's playing that kid grown up. And they announced in the last couple weeks that Barry Keoghan, who was again also nominated for an Oscar with Banshees of Inisherin, he was in Eternals. He's famously the Joker at the end of the Batman,
right?
Or the person we believe to be the Joker because he laughs hysterically when the Riddler's brilliant reveal. But again, even more brilliant than that, I'm like, who was that? And I looked up, I'm like, oh, it's Barry Keoghan. I'm like, I forgot they said he was supposed to be in this movie.
And his face all looked enmeshed.
Yeah. Leatherface, as they described it. Yeah. So he's in this movie, and then yesterday I dropped that Denzel Washington is to star in it with Ridley Scott, 80-something-year-old Ridley Scott, Sir Ridley Scott, I should say.
I was going to say, put some respect on that man.
No, I respect Oscar winner, Knight himself, Ridley Scott, directing the film, and they've had collaborations in the past. Even though famously Denzel was more of a Tony collaborator. And Russell Crowe was like the main collaborator of Ridley Scott. They were kind of both working in tandems, kind of not against each other, but as there'd be like a Tony Scott Denzel film and then a Russell Crowe Ridley film. Right. And then they obviously joined forces with American Gangster.
It was about time. Hell yeah.
But are you going to be interested in Denzel doing Gladiator 2?
I haven't watched what was the shit he was in? Was he in the Macbeth?
Yeah, the tragedy.
I still haven't watched that.
That's just him like showing this old man still got some tricks. Like
I'll watch because of him. Like I'm not a big like let me throw fucking Gladiator on type person, but it's Denzel. I like checking him out. But I hope he's able to be good and do whatever the hell they need him to do.
He's just gonna cook in this film. He's gonna go like straight like he's either gonna be like. He's going to be like the villain or something. Yeah. But I'm shockingly looking forward to it. It's weird that they're going to do a sequel to Gladiator now.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm really hung up on is like, who cares?
Yeah. But I mean, again, Hollywood, they milk whatever story has something in it. It's like, they're like, did you watch Gladiator? Yeah, it was awesome. They're like, you want to see it again? They're like, well, I mean, spoiler, he dies. So I guess we can't.
We're doing it again with Denzel Washington.
No, they're like, well, there's that little kid. What if he grew up to be a gladiator, maybe? And then they're like, it's like, have you seen these set photos of the Penguin TV show? In which they literally say, like,
I think I saw one.
Colin Farrell is dressed like Tony Soprano's dressing. I'm like, did they just like, we want to make the Sopranos again, but we can't make the Sopranos again. So it's that thing of like, what's a mobster story we can tell?
Right.
And that was the whole point of like Oz and the Falcone, family and the Batman. So they're like, let's tell the Sopranos with the Penguin. And they have a good cast for the show. Theo Rossi was just announced. Christine Milioti has been attached to it. So I'm like, fuck, I might have to watch this show. Like, it might be good.
He low-key looks like Tony Soprano.
Yeah, do you have the image? Do you want to put it on the screen of him? I think your man, the summer man, said, why is he dressed like Tony Soprano? Because he was like...
legit looks like... I mean, I'm grabbing a couple of photos because, like, you can see, like, it. Even if you're not looking at him full on, it just looks like Tony Soprano.
Well, they made him look like Tony Soprano in the movie, like the balding type hair. Obviously, Tony Soprano doesn't have the scarred face, but I mean, they, made Colin Farrell bigger, like they put some weight on him.
They whaled him up.
Yeah.
Well, crazy.
But yeah, it's just like, I can't believe, like, again, this is what we talk about, like the ideas they have. And another show I forgot to mention was that Amazon announced,
like, that's Tony Soprano right there.
And Christine Milioti was famously in the last season of How I Met Your Mother, but she was on The Sopranos for a little bit. She was one character's daughter for like a season or two.
Her?
Yeah.
Whose daughter? Wait, what's her name?
I can't remember, but I remember like when she was announced for How I Met Your Mother, I was like, she was in The Sopranos for like a season or two, something like that.
The Penguin TV series. Kristen Milotti. Oh, she does look familiar. Wait, what is she in? Hold up. How I Met Your Mother. She was in Palm Springs.
Yeah, she was in Palm Springs. Brilliant movie.
That's a real good one.
And she had that show Made for Love on HBO Max and that show The Resort on Peacock. I haven't watched either of those shows.
Shut up. She's from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Like, mad close to my cousins down in South Jersey. Big up. I'm just kidding. I feel like there's something else I saw her in it. Anyway.
She's the wife that he leaves for Margot Robbie in The Wolf of Wall Street. If you remember that. Remember he has the first wife and then he cheats on her and leaves her for Margot Robbie. Yeah,
right.
That's too
interesting.
But
and she was on that episode of USS Callister from Black Mirror.
Yes,
that's where I remember her face from. Okay, that's what it was.
Good episode, yeah.
That's what it was.
Because she gets mad that she's like, he took it from me. Like, fuck him. Like, he makes them fucking.
That guy was a fucking weirdo, yo.
Yeah. Black Mirror. Did you really like Black Mirror? Is that your shit? I feel like it would be.
Conceptually, Black Mirror is my shit. Any type of the
Twilight Zone,
Twilight Zone technology is going to eat you type shit is up my alley. It varies. Like I will sit down and like just like I watch The Swarm, I'll probably sit and binge a Black Mirror. Matter of fact, before my tenure was done in my old job, I shepherded a ranking of every episode of Black Mirror, at least until that point. Man, I had to update the list and everything, but I really rock with that show. Hell, maybe I'll look at some stuff on YouTube after we record this. But yeah, that's my kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that makes sense now. I don't know why I never thought that. One time there was like an image. It was like a drawing, a cartoon. It's like every Black Mirror episode be like, it's a man talking to a computer. He's like, I'm a human, and you are the computer, and the computer's like, what if I'm the human and you're the computer? And it was like the end.
That's accurate.
The human reacts shocked, like, like,
holy shit.
Yeah. But yeah, Amazon's gonna make a Blade Runner show called Blade Runner 2099. So that's 50 years after the Ryan Gosling starring.
For who? Who wants to watch this?
Khal, I would say me, but I'm out.
I don't know who. There weren't that many people who were tapped in for 2049, sadly. I don't know.
Just because it was Denis Villeneuve and the Goss Man.
It was a fraction of what should have been the cult of the cult of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Was just not around for that one for whatever reason. I don't know if they didn't care, they didn't think it was going to be good or what, but it's going to be 12 people watching that show. It won't be, but
and Amazon, because they have money to blow, I guess they're just like, you want a fucking Blade Runner show? Here you fucking go. Like, why don't you just take some more fucking money? They own the
IP to Blade Runner?
No, I bet they just bought the pitch because I think it's a Warner property.
Hold up.
But it's weird. It's like they got the guy who's going to be directing the first episode of being the executive producer is, he directed a Game of Thrones episodes and True Detective episodes. Someone's like, oh, this isn't even like another big time director's vision for a pilot that will then get spun off. And it's like I haven't even announced a cast. So that's another like, what are you doing here? It's you're just wasting time. Jesus. And the reason I think Warner Brothers still has the property is because they made an anime within the last 2 years to be on Adult Swim. Yeah. Blade Runner Black Lotus, I think. So it's
2099. God.
But yeah, that was disappointing to see. And let's get into the main event. Talk some wrestling.
Oh boy.
You haven't been wanting to talk about this segment, right? So Do you want to start off with why?
So I have not. I realized when you were like, "Yeah, we're going to talk about the pillars or rather whatever, right? The 4 pillars of AEW." I'm like, "Oh, damn! They did." There was like a 13-minute video or whatever on their page. Great, I could just sit and watch it.
Well, so there's two things from this. It was a kind of a quiet week in wrestling. We talked about mainly, the future of Jay Cargill, as we should, because that's something that's low key interesting,
right?
And is like a discussion that needs to be had. But
Facts.
the AEW started the show with this Rebar Mitzvah, which was horrendous. Because he comes out, and again, he comes out with these women, and it's the poorest imitation of a man wanting to be Ric Flair.
Reliving his childhood, because was it a remix of what he like the images of him at his bar mitzvah?
That's what he was trying to say. Then he'd be like, "I lost my V card, on my bar mitzvah." But I'm like, what? Am I supposed to think that's awesome?
To one of those grown women, they fucked the 13-year-old or whatever.
Yeah, that's what he was trying to allude to. And this is one of those things where I'm like, your sense of like what should be cool and funny doesn't work. And I think all the criticism about him being like a theater kid or a tryhard is accurate when you talk about MJF. It's like that promo after Revolution when he uses the crutch and he can't even use like the one crutch properly to walk up the steps, because it's like, wouldn't your other leg be the one that needs? No, like you're walking and moving the crutch. Like that's not how it's supposed to work. Just like get two crutches.
Me and Matthew at Botchamania, we're watching that intently as well.
But I mean, and you see the criticism, like his over the topness and him trying to be Ric Flair with like the tear in my eye and the blood on my face. And this is a guy, and maybe his whole thing is like, I know I want to be Ric Flair, and I know I'm not as good. It's that thing to where like you're hinting at what you're trying to be, so you can't knock me for not being it because I'm paying homage. It's that trick thing of trolling. You know what I mean? Like when you're trying to pay homage to something and it's like a spit take on it as well.
Yeah, you're too on the nose with it.
Yeah, and that's basically everything with MJF. And he had like the Jamiroquai Burberry hat on, and
I don't understand his sense of fashion or style at all. Like it's kind of just all over.
To get heat. It was the same thing when Sammy Guevara showed up with his bedazzled jeans and a fucking hood-lined jacket and no shirt. It's like, you're already the bad guy. You don't have to dress the part. Like, we get it.
It's like everybody's trying to be Seth Rollins.
Yeah. Well, the whole point of this segment was like, so I thought this was poorly built, but I like where it's going, if that makes sense. Like, they have a story, but they're like, we don't know how to get there. Their story was the 4 pillars have to face off. But the whole time, Booker of the Year, as I'll always refer to him from now on, Tony Khan was like, why don't I just put them all in the ring and they say they want a title shot at the same time? Like, which is, again, clever when you see it happen on TV. But then when you think about it, you're like, well, that's kind of fucking stupid too. Like,
was it clever?
Yeah, because it was one of those moments like, ha. And then after you're like, oh, that's
you know what it looked like? This was at the beginning of the show?
Yeah. This was after like he had his like rebar mitzvah for the first 7 minutes. And like you said, there's 13 minutes of the 4 of them on the mic taking turns talking.
This wasn't an intro to Raw?
But this is something that MJF is trying to do, is bring that WWE stuff
to
AEW. Oh no, it's been here, and that's why his segments have probably been the weakest. Like
I was gonna say, because I think the problem, so he throws a rebar mitzvah. And then Jungle Boy comes out. And then Sammy Guevara comes out. And then Darby Allin comes out. And
returns, because Darby Allin's been off TV for the last couple weeks.
Because this is AEW, which normally starts with like a banger of a match or like somebody quick just like fighting each other. They're not like, this must have been the first time that they were really able to build a segment like this with these 4 people without the use. And MJF didn't even really talk. This was more for Sammy and Jungle Boy and Darby to get their shit off.
Yeah. Because the point of this segment was for them to tell their story, because his story is the one that's only been told on TV. And they just said the same thing. Like Jungle Boy's like, we were the first match on the first ever COVID pay-per-view. And what happened after that? You went on to do this. I went on to do that. And Sammy Guevara said, when I showed up here, you were already supposed to be at the top and I was supposed to be at the bottom. And Darby Allin said the same thing, like, I do what I want in a positive fashion because I want to be myself. You do what you want because you're selfish. They each had a good point, and it made sense. It's a good story to tell, but like what I was suggesting on this past Thursday show was you could have set this up last week with like each one of them calling their shot, saying like, I'm next. And that,
how would you do that? Would you have them do like backstage interviews when they were like, here's some comments that Sammy Guevara made earlier tonight, and then it would be his.
I would have done something like Sammy Guevara has like the backstage segment, like like I haven't had a singles title in over a year now. It's like a year ago I won the TNT title and I dethroned Cody Rhodes to do it. And now I'm thinking something bigger. I'm thinking about the world title. I'm thinking about bringing that home. Then like maybe Jungle Boy has a match, and after the match he does the belt, like signaling he wants the title shot finally. And then maybe you do the next week Darby Allin returns. You're like, what's that going to lead to? You hint it in these different ways of like what's going to, or MJF, like I was suggesting, like he sees Jungle Boy walk past him and he's like, look at what you're doing and look what I'm doing. Like, look who's fallen from grace. And he does the same thing to Sammy. Like, remember we were in the inner circle, like who's still doing the same thing and who's the world champion. And him and Darby could have had a confrontation. You can take time and again, plan a story, write a story.
That's the key.
Instead of just throw things together like he does every week. Like we now have, for no reason, even though it's going to be amazing, Vikingo versus Kenny Omega is going to happen on Dynamite. But what's the point of that? It's the Tony Khan philosophy. Like, we'll just throw shit out and hope it's good. And he only knows how to book matches, which is why he's Booker of the Year. That's the only reason he's ever won the award, because no one can say, like, these stories are well told when the match happens. We talked about this of, like, Danielson and MJF was actually a shockingly good match at times. It had its moments of like it dragged, but there was also some key moments. But the whole point of the story is like it started with William Regal, and then like they got Takeshita involved, and then Danielson had to face his version of like opponent after opponent, and then they brought in MJF not being able to have a family because he doesn't have a fiance, and it was just like, what's this all supposed to be? Like they were trying to all these extra layers because like the story doesn't matter because you're not doing the work to care about it. Like, as basic as Jungle Boy versus Christian was, it was a mentor versus a protege story. And whether you liked it or not, it's still a simple story that works. Again, Edge and Finn Balor, as I said, is a man who took another man's faction and is saying, like, you're old and you couldn't lead these people into the new direction that you told them you would. I can. And that's something that, is up and down the Judgment Day has been. It's still solid for what it is, which is a collection of people that have one bright star in Rhea Ripley, but all of them work together as like these annoying heels. But Tony Khan doesn't take time to care about how he should build up the biggest program on his show, which is the world title. Yeah, he's like, it's the thing, like, I got a great idea. It's like, imagine if Donald Glover just had the idea for Swarm, but didn't care about making the hints of what a Beyonce song would sound like, or a parody of a Beyonce song, or care about like the Running Scare tour, or the Swarm. Right. He just is like, it's that poor, like, here's the idea, do something with it. Like, and maybe that's big, and that's always the negative thing, is that like he's like, and it's understandable to let wrestlers have their creative freedom. That way they don't feel boxed in. And as you've seen WWE, when they complain about like them being repackaged, like today Pete Dunne said something like, remember, and he posted himself with the NXT title doing his pose, and it's like, yeah, I remember when you were good and you weren't repackaged for no reason. And it's like, that's why I don't care about you anymore. And it's not your fault. The powers that be were like, here's what we want to do with you. And then instead of in AEW, it's like, why isn't this person doing anything anymore? Or why isn't this person good? It's like, well, because they either couldn't come up with something on their own and flopped. And that's the thing. Like, and when they come up with something for someone, QTV for Will Hobbs, it falls flat. And now we're scared. But luckily he has a match with Rey Fenix to show that, well, when Hobbs can wrestle, he can wrestle. So that'll be like his saving grace. But it's that thing where, like, if you don't make me care about you outside of wrestling,
why would I even bother inside?
Why would I bother when it's time for the match? Did you just have a main issue with the segment they decided, like, did you think it was just like too corny and
that shit was corny? It was very corny.
I knew you would. I knew you would.
I like again, but I think part of it is I don't want to knock it too much because I imagine, especially for people like Jungle Boy, it's one of the first times they really are in the ring trying to.
And he was trying to say that too.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
what were they hype? What were they chanting? Something bullshit.
Yeah, whenever it was something after MGF said, but like Jungle Boy had the good piece of
Hokey
like
bullshit. Hokey bullshit is what they were chanting.
but that's what he's become now. I mean, Matt had always said it's like he plays the hits, but he plays the hits of the 80s. No one really wants to see stuff like that anymore. Like of sweat hogs and nerds and fat men and fat women, blah blah blah. Like
I'm going to assume that each one of them came up with their promos as well.
Yeah, because Sammy Guevara's was good and bad, and it's like he had something smart to say, but also like he can't tell a promo without shit and bitch. Like
I was surprised
because he can't talk.
They must have told MJF to not rip into them because at one point Jungle Boy said Jungle Boy would it not verbatim, but he basically said, "While we have to work, you got carte blanche to go up to the top." MJF should have been like, "Great, look how good I am. I'm such a star." Like because it's like I understand the art of building up your opponent, but you got to hit him with a zinger at the end of the day. It's really just conspiracy talk at a certain point. Sammy was good and bad. There was a Darby Allin. He had more venom for fucking people. Wah, on the Twitter timeline.
He had his thing of because MJF was the Twitter timeline of like.
But he was talking he was talking about somebody else though because he specifically said you included.
Yeah, it's probably definitely some FTR, some Sean Spears, some again Pinnacle people because that's what the Pinnacle was doing. They were supposed to be this new four horsemen on the surface, but again, it's like again when I say about Cody Rhodes doing it for his daddy and his family, that's just like call the ambulance because guess what? It's the same song. Like
I'm just saying, Darby Allin is not like I can see where was Sting.
But no, and that was the thing that MJF said. He's like MJF said, Jungle Boy, you had Christian, Sammy, you had Chris Jericho, Darby, you had Sting. He's like, I didn't need Daddy Daycare. And I'm like, didn't you have Cody Rhodes at the start of
He did have Cody Rhodes.
And didn't you have Chris Jericho when you were in the Inner Circle?
He had them at that time, but Darby Allin needs somebody.
But I'm like, but the whole point of when we talked about MJF a few months ago, I'm like, didn't you basically need every ex-WWE guy to put you over? Didn't you need Jon Moxley twice to put you over? As soon as William Regal came in, you had and you were back that you had to attach yourself to William Regal or even the CM Punk story. Like, didn't you kind of need CM Punk to be in? Again, more often these are opponents, but like all these guys, all you needed all these guys from the other place to say you're valid. Whereas Darby and Sammy Guevara had a feud against each other. Jack Perry had to team up and face whoever in the tag division. It didn't work as much, and that's why they needed mentors because they were trying to survive within the realm of AEW versus MJF surviving and like this is the guy who they're saying should be in WWE, but he's over here. It's like the Jay Cargill thing we were talking about. Like she's supposed to be over there based off her look and all that, but like and even her skill set because it doesn't translate to like the wrestling base of AEW. Like she can't go move for move with most of the women on AEW than maybe she would in NXT, where some of these women are still half developed, like she is in terms of their ring prowess. But that's what I said on Thursday. Like I really like this segment a lot, but I clearly saw its faults. Like I said, just like the sudden, like here's how we're going to start it, and then I do think MJF was told to hold back because again, like these guys have to get some shine, but it's also like. It's not like what MJF said to put himself over wasn't as clever either. Of like,
it was not a good segment at all. I was not a fan of this at all. It did not make me care about who's going to be. Because is there any? Who do you think is going to be
the
one?
No, it's going to be a 4-way. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if it was going to be a 4-way from the jump, you had to have. Yeah, it's going to be a fatal. It's going to be a fatal 4-way
for the title.
Yeah. Because at some point, 3 of the guys that actually wrestle are gonna take turns facing off against each other, and it'll be a thing where like it's come to the conclusion that it can only be settled in a fatal 4-way.
But why? Why? Isn't that part of the problem
with
MJF? You such a star. You just walk right up. I mean, and Jeff walked into the room and he looks like somebody. He looks like he's somebody's superstar. You can build storylines around that. If the problem is that they're just there and they're not being invested enough, why not one at a time? And not Sammy. Sammy don't need it right now, but why not? And probably not Jungle Boy either. But why not take a Darby out and make that the story that's going on right now? What are they waiting for?
The story of why they're not doing one instead doing all is because of they're the four pillars. These guys have been touted as the future of the company, and Tony Khan sees the four pillars having a match for the world title better than MJF versus one of them. He's like, MJF versus Jack Perry doesn't sell itself. MJF versus Jack Perry versus Sam Guevara versus Darby Allin is more intriguing because it's the four hand-selected men that were supposed to carry this company after it got launched is more enticing as a story. It's like, that's why we just talked about the bloodline main eventing both nights of WrestleMania actually makes sense. You have the tag match one night and then
but there's a lot
more into that story because they spent time building that, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it deserves those moments.
But even if the end game were to lose both nights at Mania, that storyline still goes on.
It could.
There's going to be there's at least enough juice to be going to Puerto Rico, if not till SummerSlam.
Because there's still the element of like, does the bloodline then implode? Not does it continue this war against what will be like a dangerous alliance, but for good, in Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn, and whoever else they could bring in to counter Solo. Instead, it could be if the bloodline loses all the gold, or if the Usos only lose the gold, Roman Reigns can look at the Usos and be like, y'all failed us. Y'all lost. I didn't lose, in terms of like the bloodline took an L. He's like, nah, you took the L. Or even reverse. That'd be the better story. Like if Roman Reigns were to lose and the Usos retained, it could be a thing like, ain't you supposed to be the one to lead us? How can you lose and we win? And again, the implosion can start there.
Where's that four-way? Where's this match supposed to be taking place?
Double or Nothing. That's what I'm saying. They'll have time to build in where they'll try to hint at one of them being the contender, and then finally just give us the four of us. And that's what I mean. Like if you built it up slowly and properly instead of just rushing them all out at once, then you wouldn't be so like, why is it going to be a four-way from the jump instead of MJF versus Darby Allin straight up? Because that sells on itself based off their history, just like Jack Perry and MJF sells itself based off their history. Even Sammy Guevara, because they were both in the inner circle, and Sammy Guevara was the one's like, this guy is in here for his own reasons.
I guess my main thought is, like, after Double or Nothing, are they going to, let's say MJF wins, like I'm assuming he's going to win at Double or Nothing. Are one of these guys going to be going on a solo mission, or is it going to be someone else entirely?
That's when we get into what's Kenny Omega going to do. Like, is he now going to become the new Bryan Danielson, where he just has these great matches on TV and then has a middling story until he gets a title shot, which is most likely going to happen. And there's this other element of Don Callis trying to bring in Takeshita. Is that like, is he going to abandon Kenny Omega for Takeshita, and then Kenny Omega puts over his young boy in terms like this kid he mentored and he brought over to the company and maybe gives him the shine at having a match?
That's crazy. Does he still call him his young boy?
No, but I mean, I'm saying in Japan, like he was the man to train Takeshita, and one of them at least. But like, who would be next for MJF after these three? If all three are selected for Double or Nothing, it's Adam Cole is going to have his first match in a week and a half from now. And he's hinted at being this baby face version of Adam Cole because he's got this comeback story. There's Adam Page.
Adam Cole gonna be a whole heel. Watch anyway. What you said?
There's Adam Page, who after he gets done with this Dark Order BCC, but then again, like that's the other story that AEW is trying to tell at the same time. Their version of the Bloodline story is the Elite. And again, is Kenny Omega gonna be trapped in this Elite story of like this Hangman Page rejoin the Elite to fight the BCC? But you see, it's 3 against 4. Danielson said he just went home, but the whole time you were wondering if Danielson was already out. do they do something smart? And maybe Takeshita doesn't sign with Don Callis and picks the BCC because he'd be more of a natural fit there. There are all these story elements, and that's the thing where like we've talked about this for the last couple months. Mainly is that there's only one story in WWE that matters, and that's the bloodline. That's because they have even though. No, but they have these other stories that have interesting aspects and that can deliver something, at least match-wise. Like I said, all the matches I suggested earlier, what could main event WrestleMania, are at least going to be good matches. Bianca, Asuka, Charlotte Rhea. I'm not so sure about Austin Theory, John Cena, just because I think John Cena is I think his time is up, unfortunately, because he hasn't been in the ring as often. Even Finn Balor Edge because it'll be Hell in a Cell, so they'll be able to get away with a lot of smoke and mirrors and
it is going to be Hell in a Cell, isn't it?
And there's a hint at Demon Finn Balor, your favorite, coming back to the match.
Black Finn's going to be there.
Finn Balor said, everyone knows I have my demons. He said
the Black Balor's going to be in the build. I may have to go to both nights, huh?
To ask, are you going to ask that at the scrum?
Are you black right now? When do you turn black?
And he's gonna be like, well, technically I'm black Irish, so
and we'll take a shot of Jameson.
But yeah, I this is one of my favorite segments, even though it was so sloppy and slapdash together. Because AEW doesn't have too many of the segments, like you were saying. This was very WWE. The last time they had a segment like this that I thought worked and that I really enjoyed was the CM Punk promo, where tell me I'm telling lies promo. Like that was a very WWE thing. Like the week after he returned, He came back, he cut a promo on everyone, and he said, "Am I wrong?" And then Jon Moxley came out, and they set up their match perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But more often than not, like you said, Dynamite starts off with a banger of a match because it's a wrestling first company, as they should. Because, I mean, it's all wrestlers there, and in the best way possible. Like look at that triple threat, 6-man tag. I mean that 9-man tag basically. Like. Everyone had a moment to shine in that match, and you can see why this is the wrestling company. But but it's that thing where like I wish you cared about the story you were telling. You know what I mean? It's like it's like that with TV or even a movie. Like if you have
me, Drip. You sound like me.
Well, this is the thing when we've ever talked about a story. Like, well, to you, like what makes a good story for wrestling? Is it like slow cooking it, like the Usos, like each member going one by one, like it started with Jay because Jimmy was out, but even when Jimmy came back, he was still hesitant to like fall in line to Roman.
Stir that pot, man.
And the whole time, Jay's like, "Nah, this is the way." Like, not to be the Mandalorian, but he was like, "This is the way, Us." Like
I gotta watch the movie, man. I haven't watched the movie yet.
That's why I kind of would bring this up too. Like, they're like for them to tell a story like this over time, and then to bring in Solo and what made the story pop, which was the Sammy Uso aspect of it, which is an outsider who becomes family, which is one of the best stories you can ever tell. Because again, like the whole blood will always be thicker than water, and you can pick your family, but at the end of the day, you can't be family. And the last time I kind of like cared about a story like that was botched. It was mainly botched just due to, Finn Balor was going to get called up. Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly's contracts were going to expire, was the Undisputed Era breaking up. That didn't feel rushed. That felt like it was time, but that could have been told better if like these minor pieces, going in different directions. Like maybe Finn Balor actually became a member of the Undisputed Era. And that's why Adam Cole then like was like, fuck this shit. Like he can't be the lead singer. I'm the lead singer. Like instead of, because he basically said that, but like, bitch, like give us him being in Undisputed Era. Don't like just give us him standing side by side for 2-3 weeks and then like, oh, are they actually going to do this? And then not. And I'm not saying they did a bad job of that, but it's like if you want to tell like these cool, intricate stories and have people care and invested like they are with the bloodline, because every week, even when Roman Reigns isn't there, they've still made us care about the Usos aspect, the Paul Heyman aspect of the bloodline. And then Sami Zayn was carrying it himself. And then when they were all there, like again, when the Avengers united, it's a blockbuster film, which is why they're like, take that shirt off, put this shirt on, was such a moment, because it's like, oh, this is happening because everyone's in the same ring. And like this has to come to like a set piece. Like this is like the climax for this point.
It's an interesting time.
And AEW never really gets to that point. They are trying it with the Elite. They always try it with Hangman Page, the Bucks, and Kenny Omega. When it comes to Elite, they always try to tell the intricate stories of like layers and trace this back to this moment. That's why you saw that other image of like the last time the Elite were in the same ring, they were facing each other, and now they're on the same side. What was Hangman against the three of them?
Right.
But now it was Hangman not standing side by side, but they had his back on accident.
But he ain't been with them for a minute. He been with Dark Order for how long?
For almost a year and a half, 2 years almost.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's good storytelling. I'm sorry.
So that's good storytelling to you in AEW. I'm not saying you're wrong, because it's a thing where like it's had its moments, but it's a thing where like they press pause too long.
I think
only then to pick it up because they're like, now let's try to tell it.
But
which is what we've always said with Trade We Love Wrestling's like Tony Khan will say, here's what we're doing 1 week, not do it, and then 4 weeks later it's like, remember when we did this? I'm bringing it right back. Like,
the thing
which
is
QT Marshall and Hobbs.
No, that's facts, and I don't like that type of stuff. But I think the thing is,
but that was what they were doing the whole time. Like when the Factory was helping Hobbs against Ricky Starks, they were like, this might be something if we ever go in that direction. And then like Hobbs becomes a single star, and he's like, who's my manager? QT Marshall, because he was there when I needed him after Team Taz broke up. It's
that makes sense for that shitty storyline, but I think it's a really dumb storyline. It's not necessary. Like Hobbs doesn't need that. But my thing with, regardless of what's going on with the Bucks, with anybody, that Elite storyline is still there. Like they're working under the umbrella of, at some point we're going to turn the heat back up to when Omega and Paige was a team and we all was linking up before we all got hot and shit got a little fucked up. Like that's always hanging over the balance. So them cooking, if that's where they're going, they're cooking that back up, I'm here for it. I'm A-okay with it, because I would rather that than some other half-cocked horse manure nonsense. Like, again,
I never say some horror shit. I'm like, okay,
this is cool to get them over, but I mean, I think there's other ways to deliver it. There's better ways.
The idea is cool.
The idea is great. There's better way, and again, that's why I'm not going to knock it, because I think Jungle Boy looked like somebody who just got out there for the first time to really do that. Darby Allin telling the crowd to shush a couple of times because whatever he memorized or whatever.
No, that was MJF telling them to shut up.
No, and there were parts where
there were parts where MJF was like, y'all, you should stop talking right now. Like
that wasn't Darby. I thought Darby told the crowd, don't applaud until I'm done, or something like that.
No, I think that was MJF. Yeah, because there's a part where like MJF was. It's one of those things like, is he being like stage director right now, or what? It was a thing where he's like, yeah, it was MJF, because I think it was after Sammy said something like, no, shut up right now. Like I'm going to say something. Like
Darby Allin looked like he had the whole verse memorized.
Darby Allin's promo was like, that was the first time he had like, because he does his best work backstage, and that's always smart. Yeah. Like the people who can't talk but are better talking in pre-tapes talk backstage. Like that's also better, like, not to say like filmmaking, but like do a different aspect of like storytelling, of like presentation. Like Jack Perry maybe is someone who would benefit from that too, because him live on a mic isn't the best thing either. But he has to go out there if he is going to be this potential.
You got to get your reps.
Darby Allin does it too, but Darby Allin just already has. It's like that's the thing. It's like these two heels and these two faces of these stories. Darby being, the Jeff Hardy comp of like this guy who's always been over with the crowd and does these death-defying stunts. He's the outsider that everyone can relate to. Right. Jungle Boy really is trying to be Shawn Michaels 2002, like with the way he looks and dresses and the gear.
Jungle Boy.
And again, has always just been this amazing pure wrestler, and this what a modern wrestler is like today. And he's just a natural baby face. So it's like, how can you boo this guy? Because he's always going to be meant to be cheered. And then Sammy Guevara is like the obvious heel when you see his face, and then he wrestles like an asshole and he does all these crazy flips.
Right.
And then MJF is the heel that talks shit but doesn't wrestle. It's the reverse of Sammy Guevara. So like that's why the four of them being the four pillars made sense, because at some point they would always intersect, and more often than not it was Sammy and Darby, because they would run it back numerous times, always to great success. And MJF and Darby, when they had their brief feud in 2020, 2021 was really good. But I like I said, I like what they were doing, but it just not without its faults. And then I could see again like its sloppiness, and again it's that thing like it just like the idea is good, but then the movie's bad. Like,
But then the
and
movie is not what you wanna
that's what
see.
I hate the most is like, oh my god, like this movie looks amazing. Then you watch it, like, how could you botch this cool premise or concept again? Or like when you have all these actors in it, like you have this great cast and you know you can't deliver it.
How you botch John Wick?
Well, I mean, I know that's actually a good segue. I mean, R.I.P. to Lance
R.I.P.
Reddick.
Matter of fact, yeah, I'm
Um,
not really processed that news hit, and I was like, what the fuck? And then I was in the middle of something else, but no pun intended. I was not in the middle of a recording of something else. But
check out something else after you're watching.
please
this,
do.
always.
But if you're not Lance Reddick, obviously Lieutenant Daniels for anybody who's a fan of The Wire,
Not Lieutenant Dan.
Not Lieutenant Dan, Lieutenant Daniels, Cedric Daniels on The Wire, but he was also on Oz. He was the hotel dude at the Continental, the concierge at the Continental in John Wick. Again, among men, I first saw him in Oz playing an undercover cop who ended up getting hooked on the drugs, and then again, phenomenal character actor extraordinaire. I don't think words come out. They just said natural causes, right?
Yeah, unfortunately. And what sucks is like again, like because we'll be talking about John Wick 4 next week. Because that's when it comes out.
Damn, well, I've seen it before we talk. I don't know.
That's the thing. We'll probably have to do a Sunday recording, so because I'll probably see it Saturday afternoon, or something. But
I don't know what's going on.
But it felt like his role was expanding within the John Wick universe. Like in the third one, he gets some action. Like he and John Wick, they go two guns together. Yeah, like he's the one who's like armor piercing rounds after they have a trial run against the bodyguards. And he was the caretaker of the dog too. Like you can name him a bunch of stuff he's been in. I remember I've been 2017. This is when I was trying to be a blogger. I was like the actors that should be in Black Panther. Like you can just put together this great all-star cast of talented Black actors, and I was like he should be in it, and unfortunately he wasn't in it. And I'm not just saying like he was up for a role and didn't get, but I'm like he could have been a phenomenal Zuri. Not to say that of course Whitaker was back because he's great in the movie too, but like just like his presence alone would have been, or any other role in anything. But like, I'm just like, oh, he'd be great in Black Panther as I don't know what character, but like he would just have that energy and presence. Yeah.
What if he went out for that? Because have you ever seen him on the Eric Andre show?
No, I would always know that he was the most like insane. Like he would just play into like being outrageous because it's like
fully commits
him. Yeah,
fully.
I saw a clip yesterday where he's like, "Where's my goddamn slave role?" Like,
no,
so
yeah,
so I can win that Oscar or whatever. Like,
it's a lot. No, it's
holy
a lot.
Shit.
But it was. I remember watching that one, be like, "Yo, applause to Lance," because not too many cats can just go in there and just do that stuff, and he was always willing to get the job done that way. So rest in peace to him, for real.
Yeah, I mean, again, to have John Wick.
Thank
3,
you.
I mean, John Wick 4. Yeah. And again, I've never seen The Wire. That's one of the things that bugs you and fans that I've never seen The Wire, and I don't care to see it. So
he's early on. He has to step up and be the leader, and throughout the series, it's kind of like him maintaining, that throughout the drug war and the shit with the cops and everything. Like his character, even his character in that show, you don't get a lot of his backstory, but what you get, it really adds nuance to how his particular character operates within the system in the Baltimore police department and whatnot. So yeah, shouts to Lance for always taking the measured approach with these other pictures of people.
That's the other part, like as we talked about recently with Jonathan Majors and his like quiet anger that he brings to like Kang and Dame, and like again always being on the verge of tears while being intimidating,
right?
And then he'll turn the cockiness up, especially at certain moments in both films.
Right.
Lance like again always just play like stoic and quiet, but like tough. Like again, even as the concierge, like he's the guy who runs the hotel, but like don't fuck with the guy at the desk for whatever reason, even though it's like he's the guy at the desk, but you don't know, maybe he has skills himself, and then he actually turns out to have skills is the thing, which you would expect if you have to work at the Continental. But
put that on the resume quick.
I'm trying to see what else he was in, but like I said, he's in the new White Man Can't Jump that's coming out.
I didn't realize it.
Yeah, it has him listed as
somebody
Sinclair Walls' father.
Yeah, black man father. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, he's in the Avengers ripoff episode of Rick and Morty where he's Alan Rails, the man who's the train, like the ghost train guy. Yeah,
God.
He was pretty good in that episode. That
he was in a lot of random stuff.
That's what mostly good actors do too. Is like, again, I never watched Fringe. My parents loved Fringe. He was on that for years and years. Like you said, Oz, The Wire.
He was on Lost for a little bit too. No, yeah, he had 4 episodes on Lost. I remember tripping out when I saw him on there. I don't know. He's done so much in his 60 years on the planet. And he was on. He plays Zeus in the upcoming Percy Jackson Disney Plus series.
They just dropped that image too. Yeah,
I think that's important. Well, that was the thing. From what I read, they were this past Wednesday was the John Wick for New York premiere, and he wasn't there, and he had like posted a video with his dogs saying that he was home. They said he died from natural causes, but I wonder what was going on or what the situation was. Because I would be kind of surprised that he wouldn't have been in New York at the premiere, but who knows? Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, the other note I just wanted to say about, again, how you tell the story, especially with people of the future. Like you saw what NXT did this week with Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, and their contract signing. And what I was saying on Thursday was their approach to that story is weird with Carmelo being more of a face than a heel, but it's funny that they ran their version of the 4 pillars the night before that segment, because when 2.0 started, it was geared around Braun Breaker and Carmelo Hayes. Like, these are the 2 guys who are going to be the future of WWE, hopefully.
Right.
And, they had their Batista, John Cena moments of like titles at the same time, well, that seemed like John Cena and Batista in 2005, WrestleMania 21, they walked out as champions and they were like the chosen ones. And Braun Breaker and Carmelo Hayes the last year and a half have been those guys, as they were saying. And I just thought, again, the night before the 4 pillar segment, NXT had its own version of that with Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker. But they had also slowly been building to that properly, with Carmelo Hayes saying, I'm done with the North American title. It's time to go after Braun Breaker. It's time to go after the main title. And that's, again, it might not be as interesting, but they were taking the time to tell that story. And that's the approach I was trying to say. What Tony Khan should do is like build it little bit by little bit. Like Jungle Boy could have wrestled a match, like I said, and then called out MJF. Sammy Guevara could have like crossed paths with MJF in the parking lot and said, like, if you need a challenger, you're running from me, or something like that. And Darby Allin could have, returned at any moment, dropped from the rafters like Sting. But I know it's tough to book a show and to book multiple shows as Tony Khan does, but just put some time into like the key ones, because the ones that you put time into, or you let other people put time into, are all the same. Like the Ruby Soho Outcast story is every other story you've been telling for the last year. It's Daniel Garcia leaving the JAS to join the BCC, just to leave the BCC and go back to JAS, or for Luchasaurus to team up with Christian, help Jungle Boy one week, and then help Christian again. It's like, don't tell these like swerved, heel turn quick, heat stories. Like, tell a story. And that's the one thing I get pissed about when you have something that's really interesting like this, and it just gets like, we'll spackle it all together, and the match is going to be good. We all know the match is going to be good. That's the thing. That's what I'm going to be pissed about. Is like, and this is what we just talked about with Revolution, where like the show delivered, but it's like, how the fuck did we get to the show? What shit television? That's how. Like,
yeah, you gotta. But that's always kind of what it is. It's like you get the match, or they set the match, and then they don't work backwards. You just know you're going to get the match at some point. So whatever. I hope this fatal 4-way or whatever you call it is going to be amazing. I really hope that they just pick one guy.
Well, and it's another. It's basically what Kenny Omega was doing when he was champion. MJF is running the like, I have to beat someone I'm not supposed to beat in their style of match. Like he had to beat Bryan Danielson in a straight up wrestling match for an hour. Like Kenny Omega had to beat Jon Moxley in the death match.
So what? MJF beats the other pillars and the rest of the house falls down. And he's the only one standing.
Like Kenny Omega had to beat Orange Cassidy Impact because he had to beat 2 men at once. Like he had to show, like you had to think like it's easy to beat a guy one-on-one. What happens when you have to have multiple opponents? And this is MJF's version of having like, how does a man walk out when he has the lowest amount of odds to retain? Because it's 50-50 when shooting someone else. But the whole like, but when it's a 4-way, you only have a 25% chance of winning, or a 33 1/3% chance of winning, as Scott Steiner would say before he broke down the rest of the 33, and you had my 33 and his, and you subtract that, and
a bunch of silliness.
But yeah, I mean,
silly.
But we'll be back next week, probably talk about John Wick Chapter 4. I'm probably going to rewatch the previous 3 this coming within this next week, and then whatever else happens in entertainment news and wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, again, probably whatever nuttery going on closest to Mania week and everybody flying the hell out.
Where will Jay White show up?
Oh no, yeah, we can't have that conversation. Although I
not yet, no.
What at WrestleMania LA? That would be amazing.
I think there's a chance. Oh, real quick, are you interested in? Before we wrap up, are you interested in Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia? Because I know you're kind of a boxing fan, right?
But I've been low key following.
We don't talk. We do what we do.
Low key been following their back and forth. But Gervonta, he's just so good.
Yeah, that's again. I'm not a boxing fan at all. I grew up more as MMA was on the rise. That became my boxing. I know, like, I'm not to say like y'all old folks, but like boxing was the shit because you also had a litany of names and
a lot of people.
A number.
But in the 80s and
90s, boxing was its peak. Yes, and that's why I know like you or Matt or Fam, are like boxing fans. Gene and John, a man of a certain age, I should say, is a boxing fan. Not just Tyson, but like this division, that division. Roy Jones Jr. and all that. So like MMA is like that to me. But I'm kind of interested in this fight, and I've always heard Gervonta Davis just because. Before even knowing that he was from Baltimore and Fam and Math and all that, but he was an OVO sponsored athlete, so I'd always like see his name because he'd have the owl on his boxing pants. But in this Ryan Garcia, I'd always hear his name too. But like, I'm kind of interested in the build for this fight because again, they're both undefeated and they're both young guys and they're talking all this shit. So I'm like, maybe I'll check this fight out.
It should be interesting. We'll see.
But the thing is, like,
I don't really think about it.
An actual boxing fight is never as entertaining to me as I'm not just like movies. Well, because like movies do the over the topness of like how awesome boxing could be, or just like punches and punches. But like a real MMA fight compared to I'd rather watch an MMA fight than a boxing fight.
No, that's the problem with MMA. It's like boxing was.
However, you can get a bad MMA fight in which 2 guys just grapple.
No, but I'm saying like think of Street Fighter 2, like Balrog. Like at a certain point, you're punching up, you're punching down, you're punching across. Like you can only do so much with that stuff. You open it up to take the mitts off, and you can kick and choke and shit. Like not like a great boxing match can still be had, and do not count boxing out. But it's a different world when you can see a man choke a man out.
Okay, Kyle. Okay,
you can't do that in boxing. They stop you or they stop the match. MMA.
Choke the shit out.
Put that motherfucker in the guy
again, or just kick him, elbow him. Like,
well, that's always the best when they got you in the hole. And I always want to just bam, start punching him up.
You probably like. Did you love watching Brock Lesnar when he showed up? Did you ever check those out? Like he would just show up and just like. He would just drop his hands on dudes when they were on the ground, just like like a barbarian.
The impressive thing about Brock was his size. Like he was a very just like a person to be that type of stature, doing what he was doing and being that menacing with it. Like it reminded me of like Ludwig Borga and even like a slimmer Big Van Vader. But I think it was more that type of man being able to go in and just club people like that, but still be able to like run and do all this other stuff too.
He had speed, deceptive speed for a guy who's
very
the size of a mountain.
There were other iterations, but he was like the peak of like Mike Awesome, like on HGH was and not even a fraction.
Was trying to say the other night too, like with Jade Cargill, like watch some Mike Awesome tape, watch some Vader tape, watch some Bam Bam Bigelow tape, like wrestle that style of like you're big, you're strong. Maybe you're not as agile, but it's not even that like go to Japan as much because it's like
I'm not saying as much, but 6 months in Japan, wrestling as a monster, Aja Kong, like I mean that's what I see when I see if we're talking about her physical abilities and how she could translate that in the ring. It's a slower, a Lex Luger type style, but even more vicious because she's the biggest and strongest in her division.
Or be Scott Steiner, like these variations of suplexes and slams.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe she needs to get with Taz and learn all these plexes, and then just start. That's
her best when like she can do like that choke slam. Well, she does that twisting spin slam.
Death Valley drivers and Meltzer drivers and shit, but like she's so strong. Like that's the thing. It's kind of like we got to get at it. It's kind of like your man's what's the white boy that the submission guy that he always
Zack Sabre Jr.
You don't want him to grab you because once he's got you, he could put you
fucked.
in any move. Like if she becomes a suplex specialist. But because she's so strong, if she were to grab you and just get you in a bear hug, and like Sky Blue in a Jade Cargill bear hug should be lights out. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, that was the thing. Like when Sky Blue jumped on her and she grabbed her and then flipped her up for Jaded. That was like that's like you need to do more of that. I know, but you need to do that more consistently with women of like Sky Blue's character who are like, caliber, like who are decent wrestlers and who are gonna be better because they're so young and they have shown that they can pick up things fast and actually have the wrestling prowess. But like jobbers of the week aren't going to help you look good because you're just going to hit your basic moves and look the same. That's why like her matches against Red Velvet or Kiera Hogan have she's looked good because she can do a lot more
with people that are more capable. Jade Cargill. All right, man, we got to get out of here.
But you can follow me on Twitter at Davis aka Drip, Instagram Davis Colton DC. Every weekend we're here on the Patreon and then on YouTube. That's Black Wrestling's Patreon. Pay the 1, pay the 10. Black Wrestling on YouTube, where we're live every Thursday night. Myself, Khal, Fam, Mimi, and Math. And then we have something else every Wednesday on the YouTube, whereas Buffy every Friday on the YouTube. Black Watch is also on the Patreon. That's Downtown Tony Brown and Fam. And Black Wrestling Reaction Club. It seems like Khal has an idea for that coming up. So where can people find you on social media, Khal?
On the patreon.com/Black Wrestling. I've been trying to get more Black Wrestling podcast clubs. I've been pre-recording them. So what was this past? We're dropping this Sunday. The most recent one would have been Willow and Athena, and then we got a Brawl for All episode, and then we've got
who'd you watch fighting Brawl for All?
I was watching Too Cold Scorpio stuff, and I found there was a video of Godfather and Too Cold.
Did he
Scorpio.
compete in the Brawl for All?
Too Cold?
Yeah.
He beat one of the Harris brothers in the first round. He beat 8-Ball in the first round.
Wow, fake tough guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
Matter of fact, I think because the problem was, we talk about MMA. They were boxing, but like I think at a certain point,
it was hybrid rules. Yeah,
you could do takedowns, and because Too Cold is such a fucking mat specialist when he wants to be, he won off the takedowns. And I think by the third round, the Harris brother was winded, so he wasn't able to do because I think you also got points for how many times you hit him, and he wasn't really throwing. So Too Cold, he got that one, but the next bout was against Godfather, and Godfather, he was
watched him.
Too Cold. It was like a Tyson Lennox thing where like Godfather had too much reach, but anytime Too Cold then went for a takedown because of the reach, Godfather was able to just
like easily
he was
push him
the
off
supreme
of it.
fighting machine. He was telling Mustafa. So.
Yeah, God, I'm literally telling the episode, but it wasn't until that Bart Gunn came through because that was who Godfather drew next, and you know how
I
that
just
story
went.
goes. Yeah, it was the fucking. If you go on YouTube, just watch the Bart Gunn Godfather match. The way that man's left hand is because his left was the deadly one. He rocked,
which is crazy to think like a guy who is a fake fighter could knock dudes out for real just with like one punch. Like
they didn't think he was going to.
And then he fought a guy for real, and then the guy was.
They did that on purpose. The
Butterbean thing, yeah.
Bart Gunn fucked that shit up, and they said
Steve Williams lost and all that. Yeah, you know,
get in the ring with this actual fighter, and then he ping ponged that man for like 45 seconds. That sounds crazy. Yeah, at Khal on Twitter, at Black Wrestling, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. BlackWrestling.com is a website. Like Drip said, every Thursday, YouTube.com/Black Wrestling, 8:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're giving you 5 mics of podcasting excellence. Patreon. Shouts out to y'all who are subscribed to this. Y'all the ones that make shows like this happen by paying the 1 or paying the 10 over at patreon.com/Black Wrestling. For Drip and myself and Fam and Math and Mimi, this is White Noise saying fucking peace out. Let me peace.